Okay, this is lesson 1.1 in the pre-algebra book, right? This is the beginning. Okay, we're on page 4, right? Variables and expressions. This should not be absolutely brand new to you, but this is the beginning of what algebra is, right? I mean, like when you hear the word algebra, what do you think of? When you hear the word algebra, just kind of what pops into your head?
2 plus m equals 4.
Right, so M, right? You said M. What is M? What is M? A letter. It's a variable, right? Algebra, you're right. Algebra is, you think of variables. Here's the deal. In algebra, it's almost always dealing with the unknown, right? That's what the variable is the unknown, right? It's a puzzle. It's a riddle. You're looking for X, 5 plus X equals 8. Now here's the thing about algebra. And that is that did you know that you've been doing algebra since you were in kindergarten?
Yep.
You've been doing algebra since kindergarten. You just didn't realize it. Algebra is something like this. Have you ever seen something like this? 2 plus, and then there's a box equals 3. Doesn't that look like a kindergarten, maybe a first grade question? What's the difference between that and 2 plus x equals 3? What's the difference? Absolutely nothing. There's no difference. It's the same thing. You've been doing algebra since the beginning. You just didn't realize it. Now, it gets a lot more complicated than that. But you've been doing it. So don't let algebra intimidate you at all. And you see the words like variables and expressions. And don't trip. All right, here's the deal. Let's look at the middle of page 4 there, the highlighted section where it says a variable is what? A letter that stands for a number, right? Anytime you see a variable in an equation or in any sort of algebraic expression, it's a letter that represents a number. Okay? It means it's a number. We don't know what it is right now, but it's a number. Okay? And a variable expression is a mathematical phrase that uses variables, numerals, and operation symbols. A phrase would be 3 plus x, or 2y, or m minus 6. These are all expressions, okay? They're expressions. What's the difference between an expression and an equation? Because see, really, you're going to get to the point where, and it won't be very long, in a few days, that we don't really deal with, you mostly deal with equations in algebra.
I'm just on the lookout for any empty boxes.
What is the difference between an expression and an equation? It's not on here. What's the difference? Very simple. An equation has an equal sign, right? That's what an equation means, right? If I was to ask you, so what is x equal to there in 3 plus x? The answer is nobody knows. There's nothing. Who knows? Could x be 5? Could x be negative 6? Could x be 0.3? Absolutely could be anything. But all of a sudden, I put an equal sign here and make this a 4. What is x equal to now? 1, because it's an equation. I can now solve this. When it's just 2 times y, y could be anything. Make sense? Y could be anything. So we're not dealing with equations today. We're dealing with expressions. Not a big deal. So here's the deal. There's a couple of different types of expressions. You have a numerical expression, which is 4 plus 3.
7.
All numbers. That's a numerical expression. Okay? 10 minus 15. And does that bother anybody, 10 minus 15?
Yes.
It bothers you. Did you guys deal with integers at all last year where you are adding and subtracting negative numbers?
Yes.
Where you actually go into the negatives?
Yes.
Right. So then this should not bother you. You should all know how to do that. I will go over it, but not a ton, because you should know this, right? What is 10 minus 15? Negative 5, right? Okay, good. As long as we're clear that you are very comfortable with, you have 10, you take away 15, you drop into the negatives, and you end up with negative 5. Question?
Well, we didn't learn that math very much. We got the basics of it, but
Yeah, as long as you got the basics, then that's all right. That's good. Yeah, then you're going to have to get comfortable with this. You're going to have to. Okay, so a numerical expression is when you have an expression with only, what's numerical mean? What is numbers, right? So a numerical expression is just numbers. A variable expression is if there's a big string of things and there's even one. A variable expression is if there's a string of things to do and there's even one variable, right? 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus x. What is this thing called? That is a variable expression, right? What is 2 plus 3 plus 4? A numerical expression, right? Numerical. Variable. What's the difference? Why is this one variable? Because there's a variable. You need to start using the right term. Don't say because there's an x, because there's a letter. It's because there's a variable, right? So it's a variable expression because there's a variable involved. If it's just all numbers, then it's a numerical, because numerical means number. Okay? All right. Okay. Here's the deal. This is where things get a little bit, difficult. This is the rub. This is the hard part of this lesson. And that is that you have to be able to take, if I were to quote to you something, you need to be able to write it as an expression. For example, if I said 6 plus x, how could you write that as an expression? How would you write 6 plus x? Well, that's tough. That would be 6 plus x, right? That's super simple. Right? But what if I said the sum of 6 and x? What does the sum of mean? The sum. What does the word sum mean? No. I mean, yes and no. So what does the word sum mean? It implies that we are doing something.
Addition.
Yeah, sum means addition. How do I write subtraction? What's the word?
Difference.
Mm-hmm. Is the difference. If I say the difference of x and 4 would be x minus 4. Does that make sense? That's what the word difference means. You should know this. I know you've been dealing with this for years. So don't, what is multiply? She's right. Product. Don't talk. What is division? Divide. What's the word? What's the word? What word means? What is the common mathematical jargon for, two things that are being divided? Gigi? Quotient. You're right. Quotient. So when you see the sum, it means you're adding. When you see the difference, it means you're subtracting. When you see the product, it means you're multiplying. When you see the quotient, that means divide. That's not the only things that will mean add, subtract, multiply, and divide, but it certainly is the main ones. So if I said, I want you to write down on your piece of paper, somewhere, tell me, write down the variable expression, the difference between, or the difference of x and 4. Write down the difference of x and 4. Write that as a variable equation or a variable expression. You should all be done. What words do you see here that should stand out to you and tell you what to do? What words? You see the word difference, right? You see the word difference here. That should tell you that, what does this mean? What is happening here? We're subtracting, right? There's a subtraction. And it says the difference of x and 4. So then you would just go x minus 4. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
How many of you got that? Okay. What about this? Give me the product of x and y.
Wait, what?
The product of x and y. Give me the product of x and y. You 2 should be done. What is the word, when you see the word product, what are we talking about here? Multiplication, right? So the product, it means multiplication. Now, here's the thing. Why is it that, did you know that starting about right now, you don't use this as multiplication anymore? Why not? Because what will this look like if I did this? If I did this, it will look like this. And you go, wait a second, what does that look like to you? X, X, Y. That's no good, right? So then, what do they do? There are several ways in algebra of writing multiply that do not require you to have an X. Bradley, what's one way? So if I'm going to do X and Y, right, so I know it's going to be X times Y. Instead of going like this, instead of going X times Y, which looks like XXY, what's one way?
I put the Y right next to the X.
Absolutely. That is very common to go XY. In algebra, whenever two things are literally touching, it means multiply, right? So XY means X times Y. Perfect. What's another way of doing it, Kyla?
I think you put it on instead.
Absolutely. Instead of an X, you put X dot Y. That is an absolute another way of doing that. There is another. What is another way of writing multiply that? What you can do is this. Listen, here's the deal. What if I wanted to write down 5 times 5? Can I write it this way? Because what would that look like? It's 55. That doesn't work. So the only time you can put things right next to each other is if it's a variable, right? If one of them at least is a variable. So how would I write, can I go like this? Can I go 5 times 5? Does that work with a dot? Yeah, it does. That works. How can I put them next to each other and let them know, without using an X, without using a dot? Do you know?
You do the square root and you put like
No, not the square root. You go like this.
oh yeah.
What does that mean? 5 times 5, right? I have put them right next to each other. I just put them in parentheses. Does that make sense? So putting things in parentheses right next to each other also means multiply. They are touching. You just can't put 5 and 5 next to each other because then it looks like 55. Right? Okay. What about this? What if I said, you write this down for me, 3 times m. No, I'm going to change that. Make that m times 3. Make it m times 3. So here's the deal. I'm going to show you some things. One, I don't think any of you are going to get this wrong. You could go mx3. Technically, that's right. I mean, like it's right. It's just tough to see because it looks like mx3. So in algebra, a lot of times, it's not so much that you're going to get it wrong. It's just that this is not how you would write it because it looks like mx3. We don't use the times symbol. We don't use the x, the times symbol anymore. Okay? What could you have done? You could go m.3. You could do that. Nothing wrong with that. But I'll tell you right now, in algebra, that's not how you do it. When you have a variable and a number and they're multiplying each other, what is the standard way of writing a variable times a number? What's the standard way?
3 and then
Right, it's the number then variable, 3m. That is the correct way of writing this. When you are writing this for me, in your answers, or when you're doing your work, whatever, this is the way you're going to write it, 3m. Here's the deal. Why am I allowed to do that? Why is m times 3 and 3 times m the same? This is actually, I think, tomorrow's lesson. But why are they the same? Why am I allowed to do that? What is 5 times 4? What's 4 times 5? Do you remember what property that's called? It's called the commutative property of multiplication. I'm allowed to move. What does commute mean? I commuted to work today. What does commute mean? To travel or to move, right? Commute means move. So I'm allowed to move those things around. 5 times 4 and 4 times 5. I can move them around. And it's still the same, right? So that's why m times 3 and 3 times m are the exact same. And that's why when I say the m times 3, how are you going to write that down in your homework? 3m. I'm writing it as 3m. Make sense? That's how you're going to write it, because you're allowed to do that. Okay, what about, here's a hard one. Here's this. What if I have the sum of, no, let's do this. Let's go, m less than 4. M less than 4. Write that variable expression down, please. Okay, what do you have exactly, Jade?
M minus.
She has m minus 4. What do you have, Amy?
3 minus 1.
Okay, what do you have?
4 minus m.
What do you have?
4 minus m.
What do you have?
4 minus m.
You have 4 minus m. What do you have?
I have 4 less than.
What do you mean?
The less than
Oh. You have this, you have, and then you have this. That's what you guys have? A couple of, okay, that's not what that's saying. That would say is. If I was going to want that, I would say m is less than 4.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't. M less than 4. So I'm talking about, how many of you have this? Does anybody have this written out right here? Jade does. You have that? What do you have? You have 4 minus m?
I have 4 minus m.
And you had the other one with the greater than this. What do you have?
4 minus m.
Okay, here's the deal. This is wrong, because here's the thing. It's actually 4 minus m, and it's important that you understand why. If I have, so let's just say this. I'm going to change these from m less than 4, and I'm going to say I have 3 less than 7. So hold on. Think about it. Just envision this. If I have 3 less than 7, how much do I have? No, I have 3 less than 7.
4.
I have 4, right? 3 less than 7 is 4. Does that make sense? So then now do the math. How did you get to that, right? I have 3 less than 7. How much did I have with to start?
7.
I had 7 to start, right? And that's where I'm going to take away 3. Does that make sense? So if I have m less than 4, how much did I have to start with? 4. And I would take away the m. Does that make sense? So that's the only one that's kind of tricky is the less than, right? It's the only one that's tricky is when it says less than. And that's when you've got to go, okay, how much do I have to start? And then, oh, that's being taken away from. That's the only one that's kind of tricky. If I were to tell you 6 minus m, that's just 6 minus m. Don't get confused. The only one that's really confusing is less than, right? If it says less than, because then you got to go, oh, right, that actually belongs under here. Jade, question?
Shouldn't we be changing our answers?
No, none of this matters. None of this matters. Okay. How do you write divide if I say, x divided by 4? You do that one for me. X divided by 4. Or I could say the quotient of x and 4. I could have said that. And if you can write, there's a couple of ways you can write this. See if you can show me, there's at least 3 ways that you can write this. Okay, name one way that this can be written. Lauren? No, an asterisk is multiply. So if I have like this, and then you have the little asterisk, like the one above the 8 on the keyboard, that means multiply. Okay, so the asterisk means multiply. So how could I write this? Name one. As a fraction, that would be how?
4 over x.
You have 4 over x? No, that is the opposite. X divided by 4, you read that top to bottom. It is x divided by 4. Okay? When you read it, this is important, right? I mean, this is the kind of thing that gets messed up all the time. When you're reading division, you read from top to bottom. This is x divided by 4. That's one way. What's another way of writing x divided by 4? Right? That works? Does work. This is not algebraic anymore, though, right? This is how you would write it algebraically. This is not. Is it wrong? No, not at all. Okay, what's another way? What about this?
Oh, yeah.
Right? It's a simple one. Right? That works. Is this how you would write it algebraically? No, it isn't. The way you write algebraically, division, algebra, is as a fraction. That's how you write it. You should get used to this. This is how you're going to see it. Okay? Okay. Let's do this really quick. Let me go over a few of your questions so we can make sure that you have this down. All right, so here's the deal. Everybody look at page 6. Look at number 1. Is number 1, well, read the instructions. It says identify each expression as a numerical expression or a variable expression. For a variable expression, name the variable. Number 1, is it numerical or variable? Variable. And then it says, what is the variable? B. That's it.
Okay.
Right? Now listen, number 1 is not part of your homework. And you don't even have to write this down if you don't want to. We're going over this to make sure you understand the questions. Okay? Look at number 5. What is 5? Variable. And then the instructions say, if it's a variable expression, name the variable. What's the variable? X. Simple stuff, right? Super easy. Okay? For section 2, it says write a variable expression for each word phrase. Look at number 7. How would you write number 7? This is a tough one. This is like less than, except it's more than. So 16 more than m. How would you write 16 more than m? M plus 16, right? What was there first? What?
16.
M was there, right? So it's 16 more than m. M was there first. You're adding 16 to it. Now here's the reason why you never get in trouble with addition. Because what is 5 plus 4?
9.
What's 4 plus 5?
9.
When you're adding, there's a thing called the commutative property of addition, right? And so you can move them around. You don't get in trouble with that. It's subtraction that, listen, what's the difference between 5 minus 3? What is 5 minus 3? 2. And what is 2 minus 5? Sorry, not 2 minus 5. What is 3 minus 5? Oh, is there a difference between, am I allowed to just switch these things around? And no, when it's subtraction, you can't just switch them around. There's no commutative property of subtraction, right? We'll talk about it. There actually is something like that. I'll explain. But for now, you can't do that, right? So it's subtraction. You can't just swap things around. Okay. What about number 9? How would you write that? Well, just tell me the variable expression of number 9. Raise your hand. Jade, what's number 9?
Oh, wait, oh.
No, it says write a variable expression for each word phrase. How would you write number 9? 3C. Does that make sense? 3 times C. No? Okay. It's not part of your homework. What about number 15? Kyla? That is 2 minus x. There's your less than, right? 2 minus x. Does that make sense, Lauren? Does that make sense? Okay. Number 7. Look at number 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. Okay. It says write a numerical or variable expression for each quantity. Look at number 17. How would you write that down? How would you write down that numerical expression? 2 dozen eggs. 2 dozen. How do you write down 2 dozen? I don't want the answer. You're writing down the expression. You're writing down the problem. 2 dozen. What's a dozen? A dozen is 24? Nope. What's a dozen? 12. So what is 2 dozen? How do you write the expression? 2 times 12 is how you'd write that answer. If you write 24, you're wrong, because that's not an expression. That's a number. Right? So then what is number 17? How would you write 17? 2 times what? 2 times 12. What about number 19? The value and cents of 7 nickels. How would you write that down as an expression? The value in cents of 7 nickels. everybody here knows how much 7 nickels is worth. Think about it. How did you get that? What is the expression to get that, Kyla? 5 times 7 would be the expression. Absolutely. 5 times 7. The rest of these are just like it. I mean, they could kind of double things up a little bit, so I think you're in good shape. All right, let me give you your homework. Before we do this, well, let me write it down, then I'll show you what I want you to do. Your homework is page 6 and 7, 1 through 34 even, and 42 through 57 even. Okay, there it is, and we're done. That's a wrap.